The cafe buzzed with the low hum of conversation, clinking cups, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. She had chosen this spot carefully, thinking it was far enough from her usual haunts to be safe from accidental encounters. Yet fate had a cruel sense of humor. Just as she lifted her cappuccino to her lips, her eyes froze on a familiar figure walking through the door, her ex. The man she had loved with all her heart, the same one who had discarded her like yesterday's news, strolled in with that same arrogant smile she once found charming. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't prepared for this. Her pulse quickened, her hands shook, and she felt the burn of humiliation before he even spotted her. She knew exactly what would happen if their eyes met. He'd smirk, perhaps even wave, making her feel small, like she had lost. And she refused to give him that victory. In a rush of panic, she did the first thing her instincts screamed at her to do. She stood and, without thinking, walked toward the nearest person. He was seated at a corner table, absorbed in a book, a half-finished latte beside him. Without hesitation, she bent down, wrapped her arms around his shoulders, and pressed herself into him as if they were old lovers reunited after a long day. The man stiffened for a heartbeat, his head lifting in surprise. His eyes, sharp yet warm, flicked up to hers, searching for an explanation. But before he could speak, she whispered urgently, "Please, just play along. My ex is here." Something in her trembling voice must have convinced him, because almost immediately his posture shifted. He closed his book and slid an arm around her waist, pulling her closer, his expression softening into one of casual intimacy. He didn't question it, didn't resist, he simply slipped into the role as if he'd been waiting for it all along. From the corner of her eye, she saw her ex stop mid-step. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as they landed on the sight of her nestled comfortably in another man's arms. A flash of disbelief crossed his face, followed by irritation. She knew that look well, it was the same one he used when something didn't go according to his plan. For once, she felt a flicker of triumph. The stranger leaned in closer, brushing his cheek against hers in a gesture so convincing that even she forgot, for a split second, that it was all pretend. His voice, low and steady, tickled her ear as he murmured, "Is he gone yet?" She risked another glance. Her ex stood frozen, pretending to scroll through his phone, but his gaze kept darting toward them. "Not yet," she whispered back, her heart pounding so hard she thought he might hear it. The stranger's grip tightened just slightly, protective but not overbearing. "Then we'll give him a show," he said with a playful glint in his tone. He picked up her hand and pressed his lips lightly against her knuckles, the gesture smooth, unhurried, and disarmingly real. Heat rushed to her cheeks, and for a moment she forgot who she was trying to fool. Finally, her ex gave up the pretense. He turned abruptly and stalked toward the exit, shoulders stiff with annoyance. She watched him push through the glass doors and vanish into the street, her breath releasing in a shaky rush. Relief washed over her, mingled with the strange awareness of the man still holding her. Realizing she was still clinging to him, she stepped back quickly, her face flaming with embarrassment. I'm so sorry. I don't usually, I've never done anything like that before." The stranger regarded her calmly, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. His eyes were unreadable, yet there was no judgment in them, only curiosity. "You looked like you needed rescuing," he said, his tone light, reassuring. "Happy to oblige." She let out a nervous laugh, her fingers fiddling with the strap of her bag. "That was reckless, but thank you, really." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with quiet amusement. "Well, if you're going to hug a stranger, you pick the right one." Her laugh came easier this time, genuine and unguarded. She still didn't know his name, but in that chaotic moment, she had felt safer with him than she ever had with the man who had just stormed out of the cafe. And though she couldn't explain why, she had the oddest feeling that this accidental embrace was only the beginning. The next few days passed in a blur, yet her mind kept circling back to that stranger in the cafe. She replayed the moment again and again, the warmth of his arm around her, the calmness in his voice, the ease with which he had gone along with her desperate charade. She never even got his name. Perhaps it was better that way, she told herself. A clean escape. But fate, it seemed, had different plans. On a drizzly Wednesday afternoon, she ducked into the small neighborhood library to escape the rain. The scent of old paper and polished wood instantly calmed her frayed nerves. She wandered the aisles, fingers grazing the spines of books, when she caught sight of someone seated near the window. Her heart skipped. It was him, the stranger. He was leaning back in a chair, reading a hardcover novel, his expression absorbed and serene. She hesitated, debating whether to approach. What if he didn't remember her? Or worse, what if he did and thought she was a complete fool? Before she could retreat, he looked up. Their eyes met, and recognition sparked immediately. A slow, knowing smile curved his lips. "Well," he said, closing his book, "if it isn't my mysterious cafe companion." Heat crept up her neck, but she couldn't help smiling back. "I swear I don't make a habit of ambushing strangers." "I should hope not," he teased lightly. "Otherwise I'd have to start watching my back every time I sit down with a book." She laughed, the awkwardness melting a little. He gestured to the seat across from him, and she took it, smoothing her damp hair back. For the first time in weeks, she felt strangely at ease. They began to talk. What started as polite conversation about books and the weather unfolded into something deeper: childhood memories, career ambitions, the strange quirks of city life. She found herself surprised at how easily words tumbled out, how much she was willing to share with this man she barely knew. He listened with genuine interest, nodding, asking thoughtful questions. There was no trace of judgment, no dismissive smirks like her ex used to give when she talked about her dreams. Hours passed unnoticed. The library lights flickered as closing time approached, and she realized how long they had been sitting there. "I should go," she said reluctantly, gathering her bag. "Me too," he replied, standing with her. At the door, as the rain pattered softly outside, he hesitated. "You never told me your name." She blinked, realizing she hadn't asked his either. "It's Emily." He extended his hand, his smile both warm and mischievous. "Daniel." Their hands lingered in the shake longer than necessary, a subtle current passing between them. She walked home in the rain with a strange lightness in her chest. Over the next weeks, fate, or perhaps coincidence, kept placing Daniel in her path. She saw him again in the park, sitting on a bench sketching something in a worn notebook. Another time, at a small community event, he was helping an elderly volunteer set up chairs. Each encounter left her a little more intrigued, a little more drawn to him. She started noticing things about him. The way he always carried himself with quiet confidence, never boastful, never loud. The way people around him seemed to respect him, offering greetings with a kind of deference. She caught glimpses too: a sleek black car waiting for him at the curb, a watch on his wrist that she recognized as being far too expensive for someone who claimed to freelance casually. But Daniel never mentioned money, never flaunted anything. With her, he was simply Daniel, the man who laughed at her clumsy jokes, who listened when she talked about her art projects, who seemed to see her as more than just another face in the crowd. One evening, as they strolled through the park, the setting sun painting the sky in warm hues, she felt a pang of fear. She was letting herself trust again, letting her guard slip in ways she hadn't since her breakup. It terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. "You're awfully quiet," Daniel observed, glancing sideways at her. She forced a smile. "Just thinking." "Dangerous habit," he teased gently, then added more softly, "You don't have to tell me, but whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." His words lingered with her long after they parted that evening. For the first time in a long while, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, the hug she had given him in panic was the start of something she had needed all along. The cafe where it had all begun felt strangely different now. Weeks had passed since Emily first hugged Daniel, and what started as an act of desperation had blossomed into something neither of them had expected. She sat across from him, stirring her tea absent-mindedly while he recounted a funny story about getting lost during a hiking trip. His laughter was infectious, his smile disarming. She caught herself studying him, how his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the ease with which he carried himself, how grounded he seemed even though small details hinted there was more to him than he revealed. Her peace shattered when the door swung open and her ex walked in. She froze, her hand tightening around her cup. He spotted her immediately, that smug grin returning to his face as though no time had passed. He sauntered over, ignoring Daniel entirely, his eyes locked on her like he still owned her. "Well, look who it is," he drawled. "Emily, you look different. Guess sitting alone in cafes hasn't changed much for you." Her cheeks burned, but before she could respond, Daniel set down his coffee cup and leaned back casually, his gaze cool and steady on the intruder. "Actually, she's not alone." Her ex's eyes flicked to Daniel, narrowing with disdain. "And you are." "Daniel," he said smoothly, extending a hand he knew wouldn't be taken. "Emily's friend." The word, friend, sent a strange pang through her, though she knew it wasn't the moment to dwell on it. Her ex sneered, looking Daniel up and down. "Right, another one of your little projects, Emily. You always did like to cling to people out of your league." The insult stung, but before she could even flinch, Daniel chuckled softly. Funny. From where I'm sitting, she's the one out of your league. His tone was light, but there was steel beneath it, a confidence that unsettled her ex. You don't know what you're talking about, her ex snapped, his composure cracking. Emily has always needed someone to take care of her. She can't survive on her own. That's why she came running back to me after every fight. Isn't that right? Emily's chest tightened. Old wounds reopened with every word. She was about to protest when Daniel calmly pulled out his phone and set it face up on the table. The screen lit up briefly, showing a news headline with his photo, something about a successful business merger. Her ex's face drained of color. Recognition hit him like a slap. Wait, you're Daniel Hart. Emily's head snapped toward him, confusion clouding her. She had heard that name before, on the news, in business circles, whispered among coworkers as the young millionaire entrepreneur who built an empire seemingly overnight. She turned to Daniel, her heart racing. You. Daniel's expression softened as his eyes met hers. I wasn't planning on telling you like this. Her ex recovered enough to scoff, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Well, isn't that convenient? First you pretend to move on with some random stranger, and it turns out he's filthy rich. Figures. You always were desperate for security. Emily's face burned, not from shame but from anger. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. That's not true. I never cared about money. I cared about respect, kindness, things you never gave me. Daniel rose too, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. His presence was grounding, calming. He looked at her ex with quiet authority. You've said enough. If you can't respect her, then you don't deserve her time. For once, her ex had no clever retort. His mouth opened and closed, but under Daniel's steady gaze, he faltered. With a frustrated growl, he turned and stormed out, just as he had that first day in the cafe. Silence hung between them. Emily turned to Daniel, her chest heaving with unspoken questions. You're a millionaire. Yes, he admitted simply. But that's not the part one want you to focus on. His hand lingered at her arm, his voice gentle. I didn't want you to see me for that. I wanted you to see me for me. Her thoughts tangled in a storm of confusion and disbelief. A part of her wanted to run, to retreat into the safety of solitude, convinced she didn't belong in his world. Another part ached to believe him, to trust that everything between them wasn't just a fairy tale waiting to collapse. She looked down at her hands, then back at him, fear and longing warring in her eyes. I don't know if I fit in your world, Daniel. I don't know if I'm enough. His gaze softened, and he took her hands in his. Emily, I'm not asking you to fit into my world. I'm asking if you'll let me be part of yours. Her heart twisted. She didn't answer right away, but deep inside, something shifted, a fragile hope she hadn't felt in years, daring to take root. The days after Daniel's revelation were some of the most confusing of Emily's life. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look on her ex's face when Daniel's true identity had been revealed. Millionaire, entrepreneur, eligible bachelor. The words buzzed in her head like an endless swarm of bees. She told herself it didn't matter, that wealth didn't define a person, yet a cold knot of doubt formed in her stomach. Could she really belong in his world? Could a woman who sometimes struggled to pay rent and lived paycheck to paycheck ever stand beside someone like him without being swallowed by insecurity? Daniel didn't push her. He gave her space, but his presence never wavered. He still called, still invited her for walks, still listened to her stories as though they were the most important thing in the world. And yet, she began to pull back. She declined invitations, citing exhaustion. She stopped lingering after conversations, afraid that her growing feelings would only make the inevitable harder. Then came the day her world truly began to unravel. The company she worked for announced sudden layoffs, and her name was on the list. Just like that, the ground crumbled beneath her. She left the office clutching a cardboard box filled with her belongings, shame and despair pressing down on her shoulders. How could she tell Daniel? How could she stand in front of him now, unemployed and adrift, while he sat at the helm of an empire? That evening, as rain streaked her apartment window, a knock came at her door. When she opened it, there he was, holding a bag of takeout and wearing that same calm smile that had disarmed her in the cafe weeks ago. You weren't answering my calls, he said gently. So I thought I'd try this instead. Her throat tightened. Daniel, this isn't a good time. He studied her face, reading the truth she couldn't hide. You lost your job. It wasn't a question. Tears pricked her eyes, and she turned away. See, this is what I mean. I can't keep up with you. You're successful, powerful, and me, I'm just me. I don't have anything to offer. The silence stretched until he stepped inside and set the food down on the table. Then, with a firmness that was neither harsh nor dismissive, he said, Emily, you have no idea what you offer. Do you think I care about your paycheck? Do you think I'm looking for someone to balance ledgers or impress my investors? I've already got 100 people who do that for me. What I don't have, what I didn't even realize I was missing until you, was someone real. Someone who makes me laugh. Someone who makes me forget the numbers and the meetings and the endless noise of it all. His words cracked something inside her. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hold back the sob that escaped anyway. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her the same way he had that very first day, but this time it wasn't pretend. This time it was steady, certain, full of meaning. After a long silence, he pulled back slightly. Listen, I have something I've been working on. A community project, an art and learning center for kids who don't get the opportunities they deserve. I could use someone who understands creativity, who has patience, who knows what it's like to struggle and still keep going. Someone like you. She blinked up at him, startled. You'd trust me with something like that. I'd trust you with a lot more than that, he said softly. The project became their bridge. Days turned into weeks as they worked side by side, planning, organizing, laughing, and occasionally clashing in passionate debates about how to make the center truly meaningful. Emily found herself stepping into a strength she didn't know she had, contributing ideas that Daniel valued and encouraged. Slowly, her doubts began to fade. She realized she didn't need to fit into his world. Together, they could build a new one. On the evening of the center's opening, as children ran through the doors with bright eyes and laughter, Emily stood beside Daniel, pride swelling in her chest. The mayor shook Daniel's hand, reporters snapped photos, but Daniel's gaze never left her. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, he turned to her, taking both her hands in his. Emily, that day in the cafe, I thought you were saving yourself from an awkward moment. I didn't realize you were saving me too. You've changed my life in ways money never could. Her eyes glistened, the weight of his words settling deep in her heart. I thought I wasn't enough for you. But now I see I was just afraid. Afraid of believing in something real again. He smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. Then believe in this. Believe in us. For the first time in years, she did. And when he kissed her, under the soft glow of the center's lights and the laughter of children echoing around them, she knew the hug she'd once given out of fear had become the embrace that changed everything.